James was enjoying his life on the island of Sodor, but he still had a lot to learn. "You're a special mixed traffic engine," said Sir Topham Hatt. "You can pull coaches or freight cars quite easily, but you must learn by your mistakes." James knew what Sir Topham Hatt meant. He could well remember that dreadful accident on his first day. "Be careful with the coaches, James," said kind little Edward. "They don't like being bumped." Everyone came to admire James. "I'm a really splendid engine," he thought, and suddenly let off steam. A shower of water fell on Sir Topham's nice new top hat. Just then the conductor blew his whistle and James thought they had better go. Go on," he puffed to Edward. Don't push," replied Edward. The coaches were grumbling too. "Don't go so fast, don't go so fast." But James didn't listen. When at last they stopped at the next station, 2 coaches were beyond the platform. They had to go back to let the passengers out. But no one seemed to know about Sir Topham's new hat, so James felt happier. Presently they came to the station where Thomas was waiting with his 2 coaches. "Hello, James," said Thomas. "Feeling better?" "That's right." "Oh, that's my conductor's whistle. I must go. I don't know what Sir Topham Hatt would do without me to run this branch line." And he puffed off importantly. Edward and James passed the field where James had had his accident. The fence was mended and the cows were back again. They ended their journey and rested before setting off for home. James was still wondering what Sir Topham would have to say about his new hat. Next morning, he spoke severely to James. "If you can't behave, I shall take away your red coat and have you painted blue." James didn't like that at all. He was very rough with the grumbling coaches as he brought them to the platform. "Don't talk, come on," he called to them. "Gordon never has to fetch his own coaches," he thought to himself, "and he's only painted blue." To make James even more cross, this time no one came near him. "I'll show them," he thought. "They think Gordon is the only engine who can pull coaches." "Hurry, hurry, hurry," puffed James. "You're going too fast, you're going too fast," replied the coaches. James laughed and tried to go faster, but the coaches wouldn't let him. "We're going to stop," they said. "We're going to stop." "What's the matter?" James asked his driver. "The brakes are hard on. Leak in the pipe, most likely. You've banged the coaches enough to make a leak in anything." "How shall we mend it?" said the conductor. "We'll do it with newspaper and a leather bootlace," replied the driver. "Well, where is the bootlace coming from?" asked the conductor. "Ask the passengers," said the driver. "You have a leather bootlace there, I see, sir," said the conductor to a smartly dressed man. "Please give it to me." "I won't," said the man. "Then," said the conductor, "I'm afraid the train will just stop where it is." The passengers all said what a bad railway it was. Then they told the man how bad he was instead. Everyone was very cross. At last he handed his laces over. The driver tied a pad of newspaper tightly round the hole in the brake pipe, and James was able to pull the train. But he was a sadder and wiser James and took care never to bump coaches again. James had not been out to push coaches or freight cars in the yard for several days. He was feeling miserable. "Oh dear," he thought, "I wonder how long I shall have to stay in the shed. Will anyone see my red coat again? Why did I go so fast that I made a hole in one of my coaches that had to be mended with, of all things, a passenger's bootlace?" At last Sir Topham Hatt arrived. "I know you are sorry, James," he said, "and I know too that you want to be a useful engine. People are laughing at my railway, and I do not like that at all." "I will try hard to do my best," said James. "That's a good engine. There's nothing like determination. I want you to pull some freight cars for me." James was delighted and puffed away. "Here is your freight train, James," said Thomas. "Have you got some bootlaces ready?" And he ran off laughing. "Oh," said the freight cars. "We want a proper engine, not a red monster." James took no notice and started as soon as the conductor was ready. Come along," he puffed. We won't," screamed the freight cars. But James didn't care, and he pulled the screeching cars sternly out of the station. The cars tried hard to make him give up, but he still kept on. Sometimes their brakes would slip on, and sometimes their axles would run hot, and each time the trouble had to be put right. And each time James would start again, determined not to let them beat him. Give up, you can't pull us, you can't, called the cars. I can and I will, puffed James. And slowly but surely, he pulled them along the line. At last they saw Gordon's hill. "Look out for trouble, James," warned his driver. "We'll go fast and get them up before they know it. Don't let them stop you." So James went faster, and soon they were halfway up. I'm doing it, he panted. "Will the top never come?" Then, with a sudden jerk, it all came easier. I've done it, he puffed. "Hooray! It's easy now." But his driver shut off steam. "They've done it again. We've left our tail behind. Look, the last cars were running backwards down the hill." The coupling had snapped, but the conductor stopped the cars and got out to warn approaching engines. "That's why it was easy," said James, as he backed the other cars carefully down. "What silly things freight cars are. There might have been an accident." "Shall I help you, James?" called Edward. No, thank you," answered James. "I'll pull them myself." "Good. Don't let them beat you." "You're doing well," whistled Edward, as James slowly struggled up the hill. I can do it, he puffed. He pulled and puffed as hard as he could. I've done it, he panted. They reached their station safely, and James was resting in the yard when Edward pulled up. "Peep, peep," he whistled. Then James saw Sir Topham Hatt. "Oh dear, what will he say?" he asked himself. But Sir Topham Hatt was smiling. "I was in Edward's train and I saw everything," he said. "You've made the most troublesome train on the line behave." After that, you deserve to keep your red coat. One night, Henry and Gordon were alone with James. Although Sir Topham Hatt was beginning to think well of him, whenever a chance came, the other engines would talk of nothing but bootlaces. "Remember when they had to use a bootlace to get you out of trouble, James?" they would tease. James tried to get back by talking about Henry, who got shot up in a tunnel, and Gordon, who got stuck on a hill, but they wouldn't listen. "You talk too much, little James," said Gordon. "A fine, strong engine like me has something to talk about. I'm the only engine who can pull the express. When I'm not there, they need two engines. Think of that. I've pulled expresses for years and have never once lost my way. I seem to know the right line by instinct." Every wise engine knows, of course, that the signalman sets the switches to make the engines run on the right tracks. But Gordon was so proud he had forgotten. "Wake up, James," said Gordon next morning. "It's nearly time for the express." "What are you doing? Odd jobs?" "Oh, well, we all have to begin somewhere, don't we? Run along now and get my coaches. Don't be late. James went to get Gordon's coaches. They were all shining with lovely new paint. He was careful not to bump them, and they followed him smoothly into the station, singing happily, "We're going away, we're going away." "I wish I was going with you," said James. "I should love to pull the express and go flying along the line." Gordon, with much noise and blowing of steam, got ready to back onto the train. Sir Topham Hatt was on the train with other important people, and as soon as they heard the conductor's whistle, Gordon started. Look at me now," he puffed, and the coaches glided after him. "Poop, poop, 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 poop. Goodbye, little James. See you tomorrow." James watched the train disappear and then went back to work. He pushed some freight cars into their proper sidings and went to fetch the coaches for another train. James had just brought the coaches to the platform when he heard a mournful noise. There was Gordon trying to sneak into the station without being noticed. "Hello, Gordon. Is it tomorrow?" asked James. Gordon didn't answer. He just let off steam feebly. "Did you lose your way, Gordon?" said James. "No, it was lost for me. I was switched off the main line onto the loop. I had to go all round and back again." "Perhaps it was instinct," said James. Meanwhile, all the passengers hurried to the ticket window. "We want our money back," they shouted. But Sir Topham Hatt climbed onto a cart and blew the conductor's whistle so loudly that they all stopped to look at him. Then he promised them a new train at once. "Gordon can't do it," he said. "Will you pull it for us, James?" "Yes, sir, I'll try." So James was coupled on and everyone got in. "Do your best, James," said Sir Topham Hatt. Come along, puffed James. You're pulling us well, sang the coaches. Bridges and stations flashed by, the passengers cheered, and they soon reached the station. Everyone said thank you to James, and Sir Topham Hatt was very impressed. "Well done," he said. "Would you like to pull the express sometimes?" "Yes, please," answered James. Next day, when James came by, Gordon was pushing freight cars. "I like some quiet work for a change," he said. "I'm teaching these cars manners. You did well with those coaches, I hear." "Good, we'll show them." And he gave his cars a bump. James and Gordon are now good friends. James sometimes takes the express to give Gordon a rest. Gordon never talks about bootlaces, and they are both quite agreed on the subject of freight cars.